When I was a small boy in the early 2000s, I used to hop on my family's Windows 98 computer and use AOL to look up things. I primarily used it to play shitty Flash games. Also, I looked up ghost stories on SFOGs. Also had this really weird obsession with jumping houses and swimming pools. But everything changed when I learned about this 4-letter word, MIDI. If you've ever listened to EDM or any electronic dance music composition produced after the invention of the home computer, then you've heard MIDI in action. MIDI stands for Musical Instrument Digital Interface. It's actually not music or sound, but a set of computer protocols or code or numbers that instruct a computer or synthesizer to make sounds. It's basically like writing sound. Without a digital audio workshop, it looks like this. Disgusting. Now this abstract concept of lines and dots I can fuck with, said some douche from the 16th century or something. Or sometimes this. Now this is #lit, my dude. #fire emoji, said some dude who probably uses Ableton. But when played through a synthesizer, you get the culmination of the last millennia of science, art, and music and ingenuity put into one beautiful, perfect synthesized sound. Now let's hop into our metaphorical time machines and figure out how we got here. Before MIDI, synthesizers looked like this. Ew, gross, disgusting, look at all of those electricity tentacles. This changed in the VHS filtered Polaroid camera filter era of the 1981s, when 3 synthesizer giants decided to put their synthesizers together. Roland founder Ikutaro Kakehashi, Oberheim Electronics founder Tob Oberheim, and Sequential Circuits president Dave Smith were all like, hey, let's find a way to connect our synthesizers together. So Dave Smith engineered a universal interface that would allow multiple synthesizers to talk to one another. It was kind of like the internet, but it's not like the internet. This is when they came up with the name Musical Digital Instrument. Then in the 1982 October issue of Keyboard Magazine, which is practically like some old Facebook group or a subreddit or any forum if you really think about it, the Moogster himself, Robert Moog, announced to the public MIDI was gonna be a thing. Then at the National Association of Music Merchants, aka NAMSHO, aka VidCon for studio engineers, I mean they're held at the same place, David Smith and Ikutaro Kakehashi unveiled the MIDI standard by connecting a Prophet 600 synthesizer and a Roland JP6 together. This defining moment would later give both of them a technical Grammy 30 years later, cause syncing up 2 synthesizers literally revolutionized the entire music industry for generations. Now that MIDI was invented, synthesizers could talk to one another in a special musical computer language. One synthesizer was all like,
hello friend, how are you?
And then the other synthesizer was like, and then the other one was just like, okay. Then later, in August of 1983, synth-pop group New Order composed the first ever MIDI-based song to enter the Billboard chart with Blue Monday. And then everyone who owned a synthesizer in the 80s was like, we need to get our hands on this MIDI stuff to get our keyboards in sync with each other. However, MIDI was still not what we know as MIDI today. MIDI in the 1980s was computer instructions following that whole binary 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128 thing that computers do. MIDI is an 8-bit language that allows for 16 channels to communicate with each other, that carries event messages that specify notation, pitch, velocity for various parameters such as volume and panning, with a resolution of the magic number 128, meaning 0 is the lowest parameter and 127 is the loudest parameter. And on top of that, MIDI keeps all channels in sync with each other. When you put this all together with various drum machines, synthesizers, and computer software, you got yourself the beginning of the era of digital audio workshops. However, in the early days, this was known as sequencing, which is basically the building blocks of today's DAWs. MIDI isn't just for music, it's code, so theoretically you can control theatrical lighting, street signs, industrial heating and air, or even launch a fucking rocket to Mars and tell it what to do all with MIDI. In fact, the first ever first-person multiplayer shooting game was called MIDI Maze, and used MIDI to connect players for the first time ever to shoot each other. Now imagine this. The year is 1987. Someone connects a VCR to their ATARI ST Personal 1985 computer and records themselves playing the game. After the tape is recorded, that same person uses a microphone to record spoken word audio about trivial, off-topic, unrelated things to the game footage. After the master tape is recorded, the person sends a tape to a distributor who places an advertisement in the beginning of the tape, one in the middle, and then one at the end, and is then mass-produced to be sold at niche tape shops for people to purchase. Then, people can buy the tapes, go home, watch the tape, and at the end of the video, they get an address to send a postcard to the tape creator, who then creates another tape of themselves reading and opening and reacting to various postcards they receive. The year is 1987, and this is $1 million industry. Just kidding, that didn't happen because the MIDI game changed forever when in 1991 MIDI was given its definitive sound. General MIDI was created by both the American MIDI Manufacturers Association and, to make it even more vaporwave, the Japanese MIDI Standards Committee. General MIDI is the popular music synthesizer standard infamous for its nostalgic early computer sound. With 128 magic number different instruments, any homemade studio musician could craft their own musical pieces with ease. You had your piano, guitar, strings, and on the 10th channel, you had your drum machine. General MIDI set a standard for all MIDI synthesizers with these following rules. To allow 24 voices to be active simultaneously, including at least 16 melodic and 8 percussive voices. Respond to note velocity, support all 16 channels simultaneously, with the 10th channel being reserved for the drum machine. Support polyphony, or multiple simultaneously hit notes on each channel. And with this, the MIDI sound we know and love was created. The general MIDI sound was often used in early computer video games because the size of files were significantly smaller than audio files. Entire musical compositions could be composed in less than 100 kilobytes of space. MIDI was also used in early cell phone technology because of its compactness. Many ringtones were actually MIDI. Initially, when I used my primitive dial-up internet to explore the early reaches of the World Wide Web, MIDI's compact size is what initially drew me in. I could use various software like Noteworthy or my personal favorite, Anvil Studio, to open and rearrange MIDI and create my own songs. It was like being thrown into a giant audio sandbox with the only limit being my imagination. In those early days, I used to go on VGmusic.com and download as many of my favorite video game soundtrack MIDIs I could find, and then I would rearrange them and change the instruments in my MIDI editors. Since most MIDI editors use piano roll, I learned how to play and program my own drum samples and learn how to compose my own music that way. And then, like, when I first started, I used to just put the MIDI files in this program called like GXSCC or something like that, and it would turn it into like fake 8-bit, and I would put a picture of something and then upload that into Windows Movie Maker and then upload that to YouTube, and that's kind of where I started. But like, copyright, fuck. The invention of MIDI has changed the way we create and listen to music forever. Now musicians can collaborate on musical compositions from miles away using MIDI data and the internet. MIDI can also be used as a tool to teach many young musicians their craft. As an electronic musician, I am grateful for all that the MIDI language has given me. Thanks, MIDI. You're pretty fucking sexy. And so are you for watching this video. If you want to check out my other What Is series, click this video where I talk about waves. And if you want to see more history, click this one where I talk about binaural beats. Thank you so much for the support, homies. You're pretty cool. Also, my personal music is on Spotify and Bandcamp if you want to listen. So thank you for watching. Look at this duck, it's in a pool. It looks really fresh, it looks really cool. I wanna be that duck inside that pool, cause it's fucking hot. And I am going to rap, rappity, rap, rhyme, rap, rapiding about a duck in a pool. I dropped out of school.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
I know I'm feeling it now, no longer lost nor I'm found. I'm ready, I'm ready, I'm ready to make my own sounds. Emulate and penetrate deep within your core. I am only beginning and you are wanting more of that new crunchy Taco Bell chewy cheesy box. Live mucho. Text in a video, jazz chord progression.
Thank you. Let's go.